Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Welcome to the Bold Book of the Day. My name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and I'm the author of Sila, When Mommy Left for Foreign. I'm also the creator of this podcast, and this podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today, my special guest is Dr. John Sorflaten. Please welcome to the Bold Book of the Day stage. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, Denise, thank you so much for the invitation. I really enjoy being here. I've seen some of your other shows, and I'm very impressed.
Thank you. I am so happy to be a part of your journey where you're writing and sharing your story. Please tell me, what was so important? Why did you have to write this book?
Well, if I may say, there's two reasons. One is I had a great idea for a riddle. Now, how many books do you know actually have a riddle in them? You know, Dan Brown and the stories he wrote, and Nancy Drew. You mentioned Nancy Drew. They all have riddles, right?
One of my favorite, yes.
And I confess, in this particular instance, the riddle came first, and then I just sort of very easily attached it to what I felt to be the most important theme in today's political world and our cultural world, and the notion of survival. You know, all great stories basically are a question of survival. Live or die.
Okay. So you were just really interested in writing a story and making it rhyme about live your best life, or just that's it. If you either live or die.
Well, indeed. And we're, as everybody knows, we're in a cultural paradox right now. The science has shown us something that's very important, and I'm sort of going on the follow-up thought that I have after the riddle. But right here we have what's called the National Intelligence Estimate from 2020. Oh my gosh, what does this National Intelligence Estimate say? It says global warming, folks, is barreling down the road. You better do something. So now basically, I first found these kind of reports when I worked at National Security Agency from 2010 to 2018. I was a consultant at the National Security Agency, helping make sure their computer programs were easy to use. So that was my profession. But I happened to, bump into things like national intelligence estimates, which are products of not only the NSA, but also the CIA and FBI. All these guys get together. So now, if the U.S. government says global warming is very important, what do you, as a citizen, conclude?
Okay, so global warming is still in this day and time controversial. So,
unbelievable.
What are your thoughts on that?
So, first, I'm going to mention this wonderful young lady. I had occasion to be in Iowa City, just 60 miles from here, in October of 2019. I didn't have any particular agenda to be down to town, but lo and behold, there was Greta Thunberg. And she was giving a presentation there must have been 1,000 people on the street corner there. And luckily I had my little iPhone video, and so I videoed it. By the way, anybody can see it. If you go to my website, sorflaten.com, and then look for the videos, you could see my maybe 15-minute video of Greta speaking. So, as you know, she was doing a sit-in in front of the Swedish Parliament for 3 weeks during the day to persuade them, and not let them sneak away, persuade them to sign on to the Paris Accords, which are, as you know, the intergovernmental agreements to do something about global warming. So Greta impressed me. I don't know about other people, but she certainly impressed me. She was 13 years old then. And since then, she now has a foundation. I'm basically contributing 50% of the profits of this book, this book series, I should say, to the Greta Thunberg Foundation for what I call guts, sheer guts, because she's so concerned about global warming.
She's incredible. What I love is that at an early age, she knew her calling and her purpose.
Exactly. And I'm sure her parents, well, obviously her parents supported her in that
Mhm.
effort in terms of logistics and living place and so forth. All those things make a difference. But no, she was tuning in to the demands of the age. I think that's how culture works.
Mhm.
As we know, young people tend to be more idealistic. They haven't been beat down yet by the travails of the workday, but
Mhm.
Greta really captured that, and other people have joined her in a similar quest.
Wonderful. Tell me a little bit more about your book. What inspired you to set, to set your the science fiction into the 1950s, and how does that era um
Well, thank you for that question, because that
Mhm.
takes me to the other, two-pronged answers I gave. The riddle came first. So one day, I was thinking, oh, what's a good question for a riddle for a book? And the idea came, oh, in my mind, a mother is dying and she's on her deathbed. How many stories begin with that, right?
Mm.
Her son is there, and she says, "My dear son, I haven't been able to tell you this until now because of government secrecy rules, but I've been bound to. But I want you to know your destiny is to change the world, to save the world, actually. And you were born out of time, and you have the ability to do anything." So that's it. I mean, she expires. So that's the image that came to mind. So of course, I was thinking about, well, how could somebody be born out of time? I better answer my own riddle, right? And I don't have a picture right now, but if you looked at a globe,
Mhm.
are there any places on the globe where it's actually questionable what time is it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where?
Where is it questionable? What time is it?
Yes,
Well, you tell me, because in different parts of the world is different time zones. So is that what you're getting at?
agreed. So,
Okay.
we've divided up the world into 24 time zones, one time
Yeah.
zone for each hour. So now we know when it's noon is when the sun is directly overhead, right? So
Yes.
if you were to ask somebody, is it noon right now? They would look and see if the sun is above. Now, there will be 24 times when the sun is directly above because we have 24 time zones. But
Mhm.
now, where do the time zones go at the top of the globe and the bottom of the globe? The time zones all converge. And ta-da, we might say, well, I'm sitting here at the North Pole, and somebody says, well, what time is it? And you could say, well, all the time zones are right underneath my 2 feet. I don't know what time it is. Does that make
I
sense?
see. I see. I see. I was just in Marrakesh, Morocco, and
Cool.
my family is in New York, and so the time difference was vast. I My niece was having a baby, and I missed a phone call at 1:40 in the morning, which is 8:40 for her. So
Right.
I understand what you're saying, being in a total different time zone, but how can you be born out of your time?
So if somebody was born at the North Pole, this was the next step
Mhm.
in the logic, they would not have a time of birth because remember, all the time zones converge together.
Right.
So in other words, all the noons are at the same time, meaning, oh, I don't know what time it is at the North
Mhm.
Pole and the South Pole. So then the next question in writing this book is to say, well, how could somebody be born at the North Pole? And so at that point, because I was working at the National Security Agency at that time, my wife and I, we went to the Cybersecurity Museum, which is there. And I was looking around. I had some hypotheses. I thought about the nuclear submarine Nautilus. I don't know if you heard about that, but it was back during the Eisenhower administration when the Russians sent Sputnik up. That was a major technological leap forward for Russia. And did the United States have anything to say that, oh, we did this something better? Unfortunately, no. So the United States was actually quite embarrassed by being second in the technological race. So President Eisenhower basically put word out to the Navy, say, well, we have a nuclear submarine. I guess we better do something with it. Let's send it over the North Pole. Now, not only was that an achievement for going over the North Pole, but it was telling the Russians something. It was telling the Russians, hey, you guys might have a satellite flying around which could drop something terrible on the United States. But guess what? We have a submarine which can get within, a couple hundred miles of Moscow at the North Pole, because Moscow is pretty close to the North Pole. And so you guys better shape up or ship out. So that was my story. So what I found at the Cybersecurity Museum was that submarine Nautilus went over the North Pole in 1958. So that's the 1950s part of your question. It was August 23rd at 11:15 p.m. if you're using New York time. But of course, at the North Pole, there isn't any real time. So I just started I did the story. Then it has the story of a lady who was a mind reader. She was a parapsychologist, actually, who was requested by the government. Now, again, this is fiction, to be on the submarine so she could check out Russian scientists who somehow stole the secrets for rockets. And so she was there, but she was 7 months pregnant. But when she got to the North Pole, some interesting things happened, which I'll let our readers find out. But it was quite an event, a cosmic event, and the twins were born, identical twins. And one was a girl and one was a boy. Now, some people in your audience might say, well, identical twins, that doesn't happen. They have to be two girls or two boys. But I did some research and I found out that it does happen. It does happen. There's little shifts in the chromosomes and the genes for some people, very infrequently, but there are identical twins of the opposite gender. So that was the beginning of the story. And one of my novels, the Genesis one, so it's called Thrall Conspiracy, Genesis. That novel tells the whole beginning story. Excuse me. Meanwhile, the first book, which is Thrall Conspiracy, Solar Conjunction, tells that story as a flashback. So this tells you then the riddle sort of unraveled itself. It answered its own questions. And lo and behold, we had our hero and his dear sister born at the North Pole.
Wow. So the concept of twins born outside of time, that's intriguing to me. How is that significance to the protagonist is destiny?
Excellent question. Are you a literature major? That's a question. Well, get into myth, and Joseph Campbell.
I love reading. It's one of my. That's why this is part. I'm loving this part of my life because I love reading. I'm passionate about it.
Well, so Joseph Campbell, who's famous, as you know, for defining the hero's journey. And by the way, that's what George Lucas used when he wrote the Sorflaten.
I learned that. I just read Expert Secrets, and Russell Brunson was showing how. Yes, I just love.
I love the Star Wars series, and just as an aside, and not to go down the rabbit hole, but when I went to film school, George Lucas was 1 year ahead of me at the University of Southern California. And I had joined a student project 1 month after I got there in 1966. And I didn't know the student who was heading it up, but it turned out to be George Lucas. And so I was there helping out as what's called a gopher, go for this and go for that. So I was a gopher for George Lucas for a day as he was actually photographing Raymond Burr. Remember Mr. Ironsides? Walking from one place to another place in this beautiful arboretum with trees and plants all over. And apparently that I was told that was sort of connecting footage for other film that had already been put into the cans, as they say. And so George was helping finish up this connecting footage with Raymond Burr. So that was an amazing experience within 1 month of getting to film school there.
Wow. That's a great start. You can always,
Yeah.
share that story because you were right there.
So to finish up the bigger question,
Yes.
being born out of time, it marks very special personality, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And in that context, by the way, the circumstances of the birth, by the way, also gave the hero and his sister superpowers. So I don't mean to say that this is a Marvel's comic book, but the hero and his sister do have powers which are obviously necessary to help save the Earth from the bad aliens. And the bad aliens are basically promoting denial of global warming. So basically, they're undercutting the natural tendency of humans to want to save themselves. So they're being undercut by various devices and things that the bad aliens are doing.
Sounds like this book was written with young people in mind.
Amazing.
Young adults.
I do attach the label young adult to this.
Yeah.
And would you say Star Wars is also young adult?
Oh my goodness, everybody loves Star Wars.
Everybody knows that, but everybody goes and watches it too, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
even us older folks. So it's a young adult novel. Why is that? It's because young adults. This means people from the last 4 years of high school and up to 25 and 30 years old. That's the category. They're idealistic. They want to have their feet on the ground with a proper understanding of how the world works. And young adult literature is exploring, types of personality, situations politically, situations culturally, so that they can have an understanding in an entertaining format. So entertainment comes first, of course, and the message is there if you're willing to look for it. I don't make it a big deal in the books because, to be honest, I wanted these stories to be made into a movie. That was my real goal.
Right. But if the reader is careful, they may just be reading and visualizing a movie, visualizing it as though they were watching a movie because you're showing so much more than you're telling.
Exactly.
Your book addresses global warming, which we talked about a pressing real world issue. And we both mentioned that we can't believe that it's still one of those issues where a lot of people still have questions about, is it real or not? How do you weave this theme into the story? And why is it so important that young adults engage with it?
Over the last few years, our culture has taken an interesting turn because of what are called information silos. In other words, people sort of focusing on one source for their news and the same source, for informal information from their friends and so forth. They're not hearing the full story from other sources. And then, of course, the one source that they're watching also says everybody else is fake. Now, where does that leave us? It leaves us in a conundrum where people don't trust anything. In fact, I printed this out just to share with your audience. The word thrall is actually turned into headlines for different topics. So here's one. I'll let you read it, Denise, just to make sure that other people can see that. Is that big enough?
Enthralled to climate change denial.
This is a headline. And this is the particular publication. I don't catch it really from that piece of paper. But the word thrall has been used in various headlines. In fact, that's what inspired me to find the title of the book series, Thrall Conspiracy. And the word thrall actually became the name of the bad aliens. They're being called thralls. And so the notion of conspiracy is very much alive and well in our culture. And these, particularly the solar conjunction book, tries to wake us up to how easily we can be pulled into a conspiracy. Why is that? Well, because conspiracy is entertaining. That's it. It's entertaining. It's, in fact, think about all the TV crime shows you've ever watched and movies. They're all a conspiracy of some kind. Somebody's done something and they're hiding it. And then the detective has to solve the conspiracy.
Yeah.
So we're in a conspiracy culture. So that's the connection with our current culture.
How does your background, or do you have any background in investigations? Because this was so thoroughly investigated and so well written. I'm just curious.
Well, so my PhD basically is in cognitive psychology. That's an investigation. What makes people tick? Why do they think this way or why do they think that way? I just was printing out several articles on the research on how to help people overcome a conspiracy theory, through conversation. And so that shows you, the kind of interests that I brought to bear on this book. And basically, to do so, one has to be friendly and understanding. And if that common bond is established, then one can start exploring the alternative arguments. So friendliness is the first order of business. And I think these books try to do that by virtue of being entertaining. And imagine as a movie, I like the idea of a movie because it's a big screen. It really draws people in, and we have characters that themselves are very interesting.
Yes, the twin characters are superheroes. They're very interesting, and especially to me, what challenges do they face as they learn to just manage and maneuver their new abilities?
It was only after writing the books that I really thought about what it was saying. But the main action in the Genesis book is that the parents find out when the kids are very young, even when they're still on the submarine. Here they are, babies, just born. When the babies were together and both focusing on the same event, it turns out that sort of so-called magical or paranormal events would happen. Now, of course, we're very accustomed to that today. Basically, we have superpowers all over the place, which is fine. So the parents noticed that the kids were exhibiting superpowers. Oh my gosh. And even as they grew older, age 2 and 3, the superpowers were still there. But when the kids were agitated, when the boy and the girl were not on the same wavelength, they noticed that these superpowers ended up to be wrecking things, destroying things. And so the parents, themselves being very observant, figured out, oh my God, we have to train these children to basically turn their superpowers into something useful. So they bit the bullet. They decided to separate. So the mother took the son, baby boy, and the father took the baby girl at age 3 or so. They raised them separately, but as it's explained in the Genesis story, they brought them back together every once in a while with the kids not knowing that they were with their sibling. But given challenges to see if the training that they had been receiving during those years was taking hold. And so there was, periodic tests of whether the cooperation element had been growing in these children. So now, and I apologize for the long story, but it's sort of cool because in the United States, what would you suggest is one of the main problems for children as they mature and grow older and older? I'll answer the question for you if you want.
Please do.
Divided families.
Yes.
Divided families.
I was a pediatric nurse, and I learned that divided families was one of the complications for children getting better. As a matter of fact, it was one
Yeah.
of the reasons for children getting sick and
Really?
getting
Believe that.
real diseases like abdominal issues or GI issues. Pardon me. Were rooted from children's anxiety. It started out there, but it was divided family. You notice that the children who were getting sicker or had a lot of the abdominal issues or GI issues, they were from separated families. So, oh my goodness, you just touched on something there. Yeah.
Well, you're talking about the gut, the
Yeah.
intestinal issues, digestive issues, and people have said that the gut is like the second brain because it's a complex of nerve endings, and it's another nervous system that tells the body and the heart how to behave in different situations. So the fight or flight syndrome is
Yes.
being triggered in families that are upset. Now, in this case, what the book tries to, I think it makes a contribution to the culture, and actually, you're probably the better judge because I wrote the book, but my assessment is we're saying that under certain circumstances, a divided family can be constructive. And in this case, the parents divided the children in order for the children to not cast destructive things or create destruction around them until such time as they learn to be cooperative. So in that context, the division of the family was okay. It had a purpose. And to be honest, I think a lot of children already have that understanding. If their family is divided, they say, well, mom and dad they just had different ways of thinking about stuff. And so here we are. They had to separate, and I'll accept that because we ended up with a happier mom and a happier dad after that. And so that sort of changes the nature of that event. I don't know. You've been in around people who've had those occasions. What do you feel?
Well, I see the correlation, and I don't necessarily, know what exactly is the reason, but I do see the correlation, and I feel like the more we look into it, the more studies we have that supports not support, but the more studies we have so that we can have a different perspective will be,
Well,
yeah.
And that's a good analysis. And to be honest, where the rubber hits the road here is when kids from a divided family read the book.
Yeah.
Because they're involved with the characters. They identify with the characters and they find out, the characters now understand, right? They either identify with the guy, the kid hero, his name is Isaac, or the girl, and her name is Satcher. That identification then helps bring the truth of our feeling that a divided family can have a positive. And again, I'm not trying to make any general scientific statement that divided families are a positive for children in general.
Right.
Reading the book with these characters can help to shift the perspective of the reader. So in that context, as a young adult,
okay,
it might be useful.
I would recommend it then, because I know I've seen where GI issues, stresses out, and are prevalent in children who have divided families. So I don't know if there are positives to everything. So I don't know if there is a positive, but like you said, when they read the book, they find, reasons to connect with either one of the characters, and not suggesting that family structure is not important, or the traditional family structure is not important, but a divided family, I guess, if the family is so stressed that it's unhealthy for the children, then division may be what's better, or a part of a healing process.
A part of a healing process. Yes, I think that's very reasonable. And in this context, we could say the first book, the Genesis book, which is about the childhood, actually has two hero's journeys. One is the hero's journey of the parents, and then we also have the hero's journey of the children. So it's a double story in that sense.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading this book. I know it talked about taboo love, especially between an alien and a human.
Right.
How does that play a significant role in the story?
That's a good question. And sometimes, as you can imagine, I'm sure other authors have told you the same thing. Stuff gets written and the author really doesn't know why. Have they said that, if I may ask? And in this case, the hero, Isaac, this is in the first book, Solar Conjunction. He was 61 at the beginning of the book, so all this happens within the... He's finding out that there are aliens. There are bad aliens who killed his mom, basically, because she was going to expose them all. And then the good aliens turn up to help him. So in doing so, as he's in the spaceship, because he has superpowers, he's able to divide his subconscious from his conscious. His subconscious has a lot of power to explore things and go through walls and leave the immediate area. But the subconscious then meets one of the good aliens who's actually working for the bad aliens. So there you go. And so she's sort of a renegade from her own tribe, and she's getting paid off, if you could say, to work to do that. But he falls in love with her nevertheless. So now the question is this a legitimate story angle? And we all have our subjective opinions, but I'll just throw on the table the story of Romeo and Juliet. The Shakespearean play set in Italy, which had many different families that were competing with one another. So Romeo was in one family that competed with the family of Juliet, if you recall.
Yes.
And so that was a forbidden. Now, was Romeo and Juliet an exciting play?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And because the audience is now being let into a secret, and the secret itself has attractions, because it's, we all are curious about how love turns out, because we're curious about how our own love in life is going to turn out. And so we identify with those characters. So after I wrote it, I asked myself, is this what I really want? And I said, yes, sure, let's do it.
It's like you said, you brought up Romeo and Juliet. Forbidden love is really a compelling theme in literature. So it's nice to play with that a little bit. I can't wait to read your book and the series, your series. It tackles conspiracy theories, the influence of conspiracy theories on society. It tackles power and how our conscious mind, even though you said something very intriguing earlier, you said the subconscious mind was something about the subconscious mind and power. And I know from the studies that I have, or the research that I've been doing about the subconscious mind, is that it has a greater power than we realize.
I have to agree. Indeed. Intuition. Where does intuition come from? And well, it's the subconscious. There's a lot of knowledge that everybody has. If you want to get into the psychology literature, you can look up the word tacit knowledge. Tacit. T-A-C-I-T. This is the knowledge that's buried. I'll give you an example. A friend of yours, so if I may ask, what city do you live in?
Rockland, New York, and New City.
Raquel, New York?
Rockland, New York.
Oh, Rockland, yeah. Okay, Rockland, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may not have a bell tower, but I'll tell the story anyway. Somebody says, "Oh, Denise, let's meet. Let's meet for lunch, and you know where." And then suddenly the phone drops, dead. She ran out of her battery died, and so now you have the task of figuring out, well, where did she mean? And she even said, "You know where." So at this point, you have to make an educated guess. Now, out of all the places in
Rockland, New York, and New City.
Rockland, are there any really important landmarks that you think you and your friend might both know?
Well, the Palisades Mall.
Okay,
the mall.
That's a start.
Uh-huh.
And the mall, and is there any place at the mall where you believe that you and your friend could both identify?
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the restaurants, I'm trying to figure the name right now, but I know exactly where I would go. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, you are using what's called tacit knowledge. It's sort of subconscious knowledge, which, you share with your friend because you're trying to identify a place that your friend would know also. Now, in the original research for this, and I'm just saying this to make it simple for other people to understand. Two people who are going to meet at an unknown location might say, well, let's go meet at the courthouse, where everybody knows is the center of activity for the area, or some other place that they both can agree has common knowledge. And in fact, if you drill down on this research, it turns out that if people know too much, they're going to guess wrong when they're trying to figure out what other people know. It's easy to guess wrong because you know too much. You're too familiar with the situation. So there's some value in just having a little bit of knowledge, because then your chances of finding something that other people know are higher. So that's called tacit knowledge. And that's a tremendous power that the subconscious has for helping us solve problems that engage other individuals. So we start using this similar vocabulary, or vocabulary that is meaningful to other people. We start having a body language that is meaningful to the people we're communicating.
Wow. You are so interesting to speak with. I wish we could just continue. I have more questions, but I'm just like, God, this is like, I need 3-4 interviews with you. With so many social issues present in your stories, what's the main message you want young readers to walk away with?
Well, excellent point. And that's why I come back to Greta Thunberg. I'm not going to show you her picture again, but she's an activist. She gets out there and does stuff, which is a great lesson. I like to sit and type and write stories. Maybe I'm not an activist unless it comes out in my story. But I think we all have choices to make. If we feel that global warming is something that's important, I think we really have to understand there are many, many forces that are denying global warming. So the question, well, why would they deny global warming? Well, look at the fossil fuel industry. From an economic perspective, you know why they're denying global warming. It's because they have an investment in the oil fields on which they have leases. They have an investment in the refineries, and they're trying to protect it. Now, from the other side, and people have said this also already, the fossil fuel industry is actually in the energy business. So the real question is, why aren't they in the battery business? They're the ones who should be in the battery business. They have the capital funds to launch that kind of tremendous research effort, and on the money from selling batteries. And by the way, why aren't they researching other uses of oil? Well, maybe they are, but I haven't heard about it. other uses of oil. Of course, plastics come from oil. But then, of course, we have the problem of microplastics being found in babies already before they're born. I don't know if you read that yet, but that came up.
I haven't read that. But I'm
Yeah, it's
not surprised.
unbelievable.
Not
Microplastic.
surprised. Yeah. I am not
So,
surprised. Our food is infused with so many things that are, not good for us. So I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
so activism. We need to have an understanding that some people in corporate roles and political roles are beholden to the moneyed interests, and the moneyed interests are beholden to the way things are, because that's their stake in the ground, and they have an investment. And it also means that they have not thought about changing for the future, because that should have been built into their business model.
It's always important to know who's in your ear. Who are you listening to?
There you go.
Because the people that you're listening to, if they have an interest to protect, then they are going to suggest things to to get your agreement. They're going to suggest things so that you think that what they're saying is the right thing. So it's always important to know who are you listening to. Get your stories from multiple different venues or avenues instead of just focusing on listening to just a few people. Listen to the people that you don't understand, and also listen to the people that you trust.
Well, that's a very good advice, and I want to confirm what you're saying. We know the one channel that's actually an entertainment channel, according to the filings that were made from a corporate level. Fox News is an entertainment channel, folks. It's not a news channel. And but the founding intent of Fox News from Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes was to give people what they want, not what they need.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Give people what they want to hear, not
Not
what they
what
need to
you
hear.
need. A lot of people are not paying attention, and so they are not realizing that they're not getting substance. They're not getting what is good for them, what is needed, what is clean, what is necessary. It may not be clean, but it's necessary. It's what you need. So
Exactly.
do your research. Thank you so much for coming to Bold Book of the Day and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. I love to ask these questions to my guests before they go. So I have 3 questions for you also. And number 1 is, what's one bold promise that you can share with this audience?
Well, you can be entertained. I wrote these books because I have a background in film, and way in the early day, I aspired to be a big film producer. Hey, I think George Lucas did what I wanted to do, so I'm happy that he fulfilled my aspirations. Star Wars is a cornucopia of ideas, and there are many books about the philosophy of Star Wars. It's spawned an entire industry. I think George did what I wanted to do, so I'm happy to let him have that honor. But the best I can do is write a book that might be turned into a movie in the future, and I made it as entertaining as any George Lucas film.
I'm looking forward to reading this book the next time I travel. And so I'm going to pick up mine. Where can the audience get your book?
Sure. Just type in the word Thrall Conspiracy in Amazon and Barnes & Noble online. And Thrall Conspiracy, those 2 words, you need both words. And then you'll see the 2 books. The first one is called Solar Conjunction, and the second one has the subtitle of Genesis. And they have a blue cover.
Don't go anywhere yet. What bold statement can you share with the audience that will cause a paradigm shift?
Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg is causing a paradigm shift.
Yes.
Join the crowd. Look up Greta Thunberg Foundation and see all the things they're doing, and then talk about Greta to other people. She has guts. I believe people like her who have guts are wonderful role models for the rest of us. And we need people who do what they believe and who clearly see the political landscape of politicians and corporate leaders who are too afraid to step into the future. And in doing so, they may be putting at risk the future. So Greta Thunberg is the role model.
Well, Greta Thunberg is a wonderful example, wonderful example of no nonsense kind of a girl. And I'm glad that she is one of your heroes, it sounds like.
Indeed, indeed. I feel so privileged to have seen her at that Iowa City get together.
What's a bold move you'd like to make in the future?
Yeah, the bold move in the future is to see these books turned into a movie or a series on TV. The premise is actually pretty neat. I don't know if you're a science fiction fan, but a single image is where it all comes down to. So, I don't know if you're familiar with the Stargate series. And the Stargate series has a circular device that was found in Egypt, in the story. And if you dial it, you go through a wormhole to one of any number of planets. So this was the longest running science fiction series ever, 10 years. And then it had a number of spin-offs, 2 or 3 spin-offs. But the main image, of course, is the circular Stargate that you can walk through and then have an adventure. Now, when you get down to it, this is no different than Alice's going through the looking mirror into the Alice in Wonderland, going to Wonderland. Yeah. But that single image pulls it all together. It helps the audience understand what's going on. And then, I want to watch the next episode. Now, in our case, we have the image of twins being born aboard a nuclear submarine at the North Pole. And I didn't mention this before, but their nuclear submarine is lowering a flying saucer onto the sea floor right there. And the flying saucer has a transponder that's radiating up. Meanwhile, the pole star is radiating down, and I'm trying to get my hands lined up, and they're meeting right where the twins are being born and jiggling their chromosomes to give them superpowers. So that would be the image starting each episode. I think it's exciting. What do you think?
Fascinating. And I love that you can see it. You can visualize, not just, okay, now I've written a book. Now you're visualizing how the series will be played out, how it's starting. That's really amazing. And I wish you all the best. You said it about how strong our mind is. And I believe in the power of words that you've already written and the power of words that you're now speaking about, the possibilities of your book. I wish you all the best. And I pray that you get that dream of watching your series on the big screen or the television stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Denise, and good luck to you.
Oh, it was a pleasure. If anyone is out there listening and you would like to write your story, get your message out of your head and onto paper, please consider Bold Publishing to help you get your book idea out of your head and onto paper, just like Dr. John Sorflaten did. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.